Those are the sounds from Shadow of the Colossus, one of the games we'll be talking about here on the show today. My name is Matthew Falvey from a 90s Kid, and I'm joined by Matthew Olin.
Matthew Olin. That's me. Hey, I'm also from a 90s Kid.
That's right.
I like games.
Our resident review writer, the guy who spends all the time with all the games, so you can just pick maybe 1% of the ones he plays to.
And tell you what's good and bad, so then you don't spend your money on bad things.
There you go.
That's what I do.
Very kind of you. Maybe we'll leave some of the Shadow of Colossus just peeking in the background. It'll be all right. So, which one do you want to talk about first, my friend? We got Shadow of the Colossus, Monster Hunter World, Dragon Ball, Inner Space.
You know what? Let's start with Dragon Ball, because I just finished that like yesterday.
Dragon Ball? All right, tell me all about it.
So Dragon Ball Fighter Z is a 2D fighter. Most other Dragon Ball games are normally like this weird 3D kind of thing. You know, you'd fly super high in the air. I played some on PS2, some on 360. Recently, Xenoverse, I think, was the one that came out.
Okay.
But this Dragon Ball is 2D, like your normal Street Fighter. But what it does really well is emulate that Dragon Ball kind of style. You know how Cuphead really nailed the 1930s cartoon in a way that nobody else ever has? Dragon Ball Fighter Z nails the anime look, unlike anything we've ever seen. It's an interesting game. Matt, how much do you play fighters, and when you do, what kind of fighter do you like? Do you like a Mortal Kombat kind of thing? Do you like the real crazy ones like Blaze Blue? What's your style?
Well, I grew up playing a lot of Street Fighter, and I loved Mortal Kombat up until about 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I haven't really played any of the later ones. I love Street Fighter Alpha. It's my favorite series. And some of
Hey.
the Versus series as well. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and X-Men vs. Street Fighter are some of my favorite ones. Marvel Superheroes. So
Hey.
before they get too competitive. I find with fighting games, they're pretty easy to enjoy with somebody of your same skill level. But then when you take them online, you really have to click with it, or you have to be willing to dedicate a lot of time. So
They definitely get competitive for
I
sure.
mean, I'm up for like a fun. If I could find if Dragon Ball could be this game that is easy to pick up with other people, so I could sort of share it around with them, and
Yep.
you and me could go a couple rounds, that kind of thing. I don't like. Is this welcoming to a person who's not a fighter freak?
That's where I was trying to lead. I'm so Matt. We work so well together. We gel. Delicious, like a delicious dessert. It's just smooth together.
Peanut butter.
Yeah. So
And more peanut butter.
Dragon Ball, the games before this one have always been they have a high barrier for entry, like another game we'll talk about later, Monster Hunter World.
Okay.
But those games were notoriously hard. You have to know like a bunch of different moves, and each character's crazy different. And what Dragon Ball FighterZ does is it makes everything super simplistic. It's super welcoming. So the most difficult move, special move or otherwise, that you'll ever pull off is no more difficult than a Hadouken in Street Fighter. And for anybody who doesn't know that, it is quarter circle. So you just whoop and then press a button, right? Every single special move in this game for everybody, I mean, there's some small exceptions, they're all going to be quarter circle, one button. You know, it doesn't matter who it is. The most complex thing you'll ever do is a quarter circle forward or a quarter circle back. That means these crazy Street Fighter, rolling motions, these nutso combos and stuff like that. Those aren't really the focus of the game, at least when you're starting out. It's all about, you have light, medium, heavy, and then you have a dedicated Kai blast, like a fireball. And this game is all about auto combos. So if you want to do a dope combo, you just start punching them and keep tapping the same button, and you'll do a pretty cool combo. Like, experts in the game can do combos way crazier than that, but for somebody new starting out, it's not unrealistic just to mash and, do circles and get a 30-hit combo. That's what this game is all about. It's about making you feel powerful even if you don't know exactly what you're doing. It is a button mashing game that leads into some sort of strategy, but the strategy kind of comes from how you create your team. Because unlike other Dragon Ball games, this game is like Marvel vs. Capcom. You choose 3 different people. You have your team. You can call on them to assist you during fights. You can switch in and out. They have different health bars and stuff. So you kind of comprise your team. But I'd be lying if I said I was like figuring out combos. What I would do is I would pick a character I liked, which for me it was Goten, he's a fun little dude. He's like Gohan and Trunks put together. Here's the thing too, I want to say, I'm not like a super big Dragon Ball guy, so I don't know a whole lot about it. I just picked who was fun and who was cool. And I think for me, not knowing a bunch about Dragon Ball and having so much fun with it, it goes to show that it is decent and welcoming for even those who aren't fans of the franchise. But yeah, you can just get in there and play and do awesome stuff. As a fighting system, it is deep enough to have tournament play. We'll see, but it seems deep enough. But it's also super welcoming for those who just want to get in there and smash buttons. I think at this point, Matt, like you could easily, even though I've beaten the main story and played it for, like 15 hours, if you played and had a good time, you could probably put a match or 2 on me. I'm not far enough in, where I'm basically mashing and doing quarter circles and having a good old time. And then whenever I have enough of my, super meter, you do a super move and it looks crazy. But yeah, that's what this game does. It's really about the presentation. It's about that video. It's a good time.
Yeah, a lot of that reminds me of what I had such a good time with, say, like Marvel vs. Capcom, those versus style X-Men versus Street Fighter, is that they were very intuitive fighting motions that you grew up doing, like quarter circles. And I remember being with Wolverine and being with him, and his beard is so rough, but being able to just do like fireball and dragon uppercut motions, and then just kind of stringing them together, and you would do these things that looked really great. You pop somebody up, you didn't even really realize how you did that air pop up, then you just did a double jump up and you're chanting, and then you do the same motion but do 3 buttons instead of 1, and all of a sudden you're doing a super thing and you're tagging people in, and it all felt very, very intuitive and pretty simple, and things just looked good. Because really a fighting game shouldn't be about it being difficult to perform the moves. It should be more about, like, rock, paper, scissors is fun because it's about the decision. It's not that it's very difficult to, you don't have to sit there and actually make a rock. You just, anyone can do it, right? So it's, that sounds pretty interesting to me. I mean, when I first heard Dragon Ball game, I thought, there have been so many, and also just bad. There've been a lot of bad Dragon Ball games.
Yep.
I always remember the first Dragon Ball game I saw someone play on GameCube, and I just thought, this is not good. The person just really liked Dragon Ball, and they didn't mind playing a crap game. I'm sure there are some good.
What it was.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some good games with this. So this seems like this is like more than solid. I mean, are you wholeheartedly recommending this to people that have an interest in fighting games, or even people that maybe have a dated interest in fighting games that might want to get back into something more simple?
So now that I have said up front what is great about the game, here's where I sandbag it. I did review it at a 7 out of 10, and I couldn't put it low. I was battling between a 6.5 and a 7, but those visuals, and I played it on like a 4K TV, 65-inch. Those visuals really are something special.
Wow, really?
I will be talking about them. Yeah, I mean, it's just like Cuphead. Like Cuphead nailed that 1930s. You take you throw off a super move, and Goku's throwing a Kamehameha, freeze frame that, and try to compare it to the show, and you might be able to tell the difference, but some of it is just dead on, and it's really, really well done. So I'm sure I'll be talking about it in regards to best visuals whenever we do like Game of the Year 2018 stuff. But here's the thing. With fighting games, they have grown to have story modes that are interesting, that are bulky. There's been other modes that have added on, have Injustice, which was my favorite fighting game of last year. You had the multiverse mode, you had King of the Hill, you had all sorts of modes for both solo and multiplayer play. Dragon Ball falls short on the mode selection because you have story mode, you have arcade mode, practice mode, etc. Those are like your solo and your offline kind of offerings. And then you have multiplayer. You have like World Arena, you have ranked it's just essentially multiplayer. There's nothing really special about it. You have ranked matches, you can spectate matches, stuff like that. As you compete, you get like Zenny, which is their money, and then you can spend that in-game money on like loot boxes, which give you little chibi characters that you move around the hub world with. But when it comes down to the actual content, here's the thing. You have a story mode. It's broken up into 3 parts, right? The story is about Frieza and Cell have come back to Earth. There's a soul inside of Goku who is not his own, and it's up to that soul to take on Frieza and Cell and figure out why there's all these clones of Dragon Ball characters around the world. And also, there's Android 21, a new character, and she sits in the middle of all of it. So it's actually a pretty interesting hook. You got Dragon Ball characters, there's clones all over, the big baddies are back, what's going on? It's interesting at the beginning. It all plays out in kind of text. You talk to characters. There's a few cool cutscenes in between, but a lot of it is reading. You can have English or Japanese voice. I went Japanese. But what happens is you play through maybe like a 5-hour story, and then it's split into 3 arcs. It's the same story, but from 3 different perspectives, and I won't spoil what the other perspectives are. But essentially, you're replaying the story, getting a little bit more information, but the story itself is kind of garbage. Like, I didn't really care all that much about it, and that's maybe because I don't like Dragon Ball that much. But the cool stuff in the story comes from the character interactions. Kind of like how in Justice you have Batman and Superman go up against each other and they say something witty back and forth. They have like a lot of that in Dragon Ball. But when you're not doing that, what you're doing is you're fighting these clones. The story is kind of laid out on not a grid, but it's icons connected by lines. And you have to make it to one icon by going, forging your own path. And in between, you're going to do these clone fights. And after a while, the game just feels like you're doing padded fights for no reason. And when you have a story that's broken up into 3 parts, and 70% of that is just fighting these clones over and over, I wonder why they didn't just take the 3 parts, condense it into one better story.
Right.
By the end of arc 1, going into arc 2, I did not care about the story anymore. By the end of arc 3, I was really, really wanting the thing to be over. And that's how you unlock a certain character, is by beating that story. I've heard other people echo the same sentiment. They don't want to finish the story because it's boring. But I've also heard other people say it's really cool. And I feel like those people are the people who like the fan servicey stuff. Arcade mode is a little bit cooler. Well, I mean, it's an arcade mode. You have 3 different courses you can take, and as you fight, you get a performance ranking, and then you move to a different ladder based on that ranking, I guess. It's like this weird kind of fluctuating difficulty thing, and your objective is always to stay on the most difficult path, get the best rating, and unlock a character there. But once you've beaten story mode, you've played arcade mode, you've seen the single-player offerings. I did it in like 15 hours. That was it. And then if you're not super into competitive, you're not going to want to go online. What this game is good for is it's good for getting a bunch of friends together, partying it up or whatever, and then throwing in the game and saying, hey, who wants to press buttons and look at flashy stuff on the screen? it's fun. It's like that Super Smash Brothers level of fun where there is depth if you really want to get into it. But I think it succeeds the most at just that getting in there, you're playing, you're having fun with your friends. I'm sure there's people who will really attach to this game and love it. For me, it was a mixed emotion kind of thing. I had fun. I thought it was very, very pretty, but it's lackluster. We're used to these big story modes from Mortal Kombat and Injustice. Dragon Ball story mode falls flat. The arcade offerings and other offline offerings aren't great. So it comes down to if you really want to play a competitive online fighter. And for me, I'm good right now. Like, I don't want to learn a whole nother system. But I had fun with what I did. For 15 hours, from the beginning to the end, I felt like I learned something. I felt like I knew how the characters play and I got better, but I didn't want to go any further than that. I didn't want to go to that second phase of learning a specific team and figuring out combos. Like, nah, I'm all right.
Well, I think with fighting games, you've got, if you want to get anywhere near it being fun to play online, you have to embrace the competitive side of things. And I think that, I mean, Dragon Ball's coming from from a space of, I mean, they're going up against big guns. They're a big license, but they haven't been on the competitive scene. They're not a big name on the competitive scene, if they are a name there at all. So I really think they should embrace the casual aspect of it as much as possible. Like, how do you make something casual and competitive at the same time that people can have fun? You need to keep things really simple. I mean, you look at a game like Dive Kick or what was that other one?
That's what this game does the best. I mean, Dive Kick is a perfect exactly. That's what this game I think does well, is that it's just pressing buttons. You smack the X button or Y button or B button 3 times in a row, you're going to do a cool combo. But I always say there's 3 phases of fighting games. There's playing around, having fun, and smashing buttons. Then there's the second phase, which is finding a character you like or team that you like and learning them intrinsically, which then leads to the third phase, which is now you're good at the game system. You can experiment with other players and counterpick. You know, that's the 3 phase of getting to competitive in fighters. But in order to get to that second phase, you have to either really care about the game's mechanics, really like the longevity of it and commit to it, or be a huge fighting game fan, you know? And for me, it was, I've played this, I saw its content, and I think I like it, but I think I'm done, you know? And it's okay to have a 15-hour fun fighting game. It's fine. It's just compared to some of these other ones like Injustice and the past Mortal Kombat even, which I wasn't a huge fan of, the content offering is kind of bare bones.
Well, so, how long is the story in Injustice or Mortal Kombat?
6 to 8 hours. But that's the thing too, is when you have a story like Injustice, each fight matters. You know, it starts off Batman's fighting Superman, and there's a cutscene, and oh, now Batman is going to go over here, and Superman's going to go over here, and you're starting a story, and then the next scene will be intrinsic to the story. What Dragon Ball does is it's like, hey, in this story right now, you want to go fight Cell, so you have to make it to that chapter-specific kind of fight where we're going to get story stuff. Right. But before you do that, you're going to have to do 4 different fights against clones. Right. It's essentially like taking an Injustice story, splitting it into 3 parts, and then padding out the fights in between each chapter-specific fight. So you get 15 hours, but like 9 of them is just padding, to me at least.
Wow. You know, lately I've been playing some more PS2-centric games like Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3.
Oh, yeah?
And I really miss games that were just less than 10 hours to beat. But they really encouraged you to go back, mess around with the systems. They offered little tricks and rewards. They were fun to go back and do. Like if you finished like a 40 to 60 hour Ubisoft open world game, you're probably not really jumping at the bit to go back and do all this stuff again. It's because they've basically taken game development and they just spread it out really thin.
Games as a service, man. That's what everyone's into nowadays.
Yeah, they want you to just be playing that one game forever. They want it to be games as a lifestyle. They want you to be a Destiny player, get a Destiny
lifestyle
tattoo.
Game.
That's what you do. They want you to play with your friends so that even if you don't feel like playing that day, we can't let your friend down. It's Destiny.
Yeah, you got to get that login bonus. Got to get that.
But I just loved how detailed games, like that style. I mean, there's the Hideo Kojima games, so they're obviously very, very detailed. But I miss that when the game was 8 hours long. You could really, it was like going to a farmer's market and buying something from an artisan. It was, yeah, sure, it was expensive for the amount of hours you got, but it was, the focus was there, and everything made sense. Every little piece of the game would sort of talk to another piece of the game, and
Yeah.
I really miss that about short games. So it sounds like Dragon Ball they decided to pad it out. They thought, well, we might as well just.
The story is padded out. The arcade mode, essentially, you have 3 courses, and the arcade is cool because you'll go into a fight, and instead of just throwing 3 random characters at you, they're like themed. So it'll be like the Saiyan team, or here's the God characters. So each fight in the arcade mode is thematic in a way. But eventually, you play through the 3 courses. Here's a thing too. If you get Dragon Ball and you want to beat the game, here's how you do it. You press right trigger, and then you do 3 X's or 3 squares, depending on your system. And then when the AI does an in-air roll, you press right trigger again. There's a really dumb, easy combo that the AI just doesn't know how to deal with. And I went to arcade mode, chose the hardest course, or the second hardest course, and just got an S on it without trying at all. So the game is kind of easy too. I never really struggled. There's like difficulty spikes, but that's what I'm saying. The solo, I breezed through it. It wasn't difficult. It was just repetitive. The arcade was fun, but it's not $60 fun. And I'm not looking to learn a new fighter right now.
Absolutely.
So it's a good time, but yeah.
All right, I feel like our discussion of it has mirrored the game. We've circled around and we've stretched it out. So real quick, guys, before we move on from that, Corey or Maester wants to say, me and my friends agreed. Android 21 from DBFZ is waifu material.
Yeah, see, she's a fun character, and like that's what I'm saying. There's the whole hook. She's an interesting character, but eventually just drowns it out. Android 21 is fun though. I like her a lot. And having the 3 perspectives does give you different perspectives on the story. Just wish the story was a little bit cooler. But yeah, Android 21, good character. There's a good roster in this game too. I like some of the characters.
Piccolo.
DLC. Yeah, Piccolo's in there. My team was free. Yeah,
those are the only ones I know.
My team was Frieza, Goten, and then it would fluctuate between like a Goku or a Gohan or a Krillin or something. But it's fun. It's a fun time. Just don't go in there expecting like a great, like super, this is gonna win you over even if you don't like Dragon Ball. It can, but it probably won't.
But Dragon Ball fans will be probably pleasantly surprised.
If you like Dragon Ball, get it. Sure.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to how about Shadow of the Colossus? What do you think of that? Or maybe we can talk about that one last because Maester is really, really sensitive about spoilers on this game. So maybe we can leave that to the last. Even though
don't worry, I won't spoil anything about Shadow of the Colossus. It's a hard game to spoil. It's very light on story, so I won't say much about it.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't talk about the ending. You don't talk about what's really going on. You don't talk about what the monsters are. I mean, you're just going to be talking about the mechanics of it. Is it a good port, really?
Yes,
exactly. Let's talk about that now, because Jeremy B has already bought Shadow of the Colossus. By the way, Jeremy B just upped his patronage. He tripled it.
Nice, dude.
More than tripled it.
Nice, dude.
Thanks, Jeremy B.
That's a good time to remind all people who are watching, and if you're watching this archived, definitely go to our Patreon. Matt, what's the URL again? Is it just?
Oh, you just go a 90s kid Patreon. Type of Google. Who wants to type in a
down there
website? It is. It's in the description. You'll get earlier access to our non-streamed videos, and you get a say in what videos what games are streamed.
And as we move into 2018, we're going to have more stuff as far as article content from me and other videos and stuff. So please do Patreon subscribe to us. That'd be awesome.
All right. So Shadow of the Colossus. Yeah. Jeremy B's got it. Our star patron. He's played it up to the 5th fight. He's pretty happy. And then he bought Final Fantasy 12 again on the PC. So I think he owns it on the PC and probably the PS4. All right. So let's go with... Oh, Ted Belcher wanted to chime in on some of that fighting stuff. He said, rewards for fighting are not worth the time investment as an MLG gamer. More rewarding to learn League of Legends. All of Marvel vs. Capcom players went to Dragon Ball quickly.
That's something it's if you're going to learn a game and you're trying to get esports, like that's what I meant is that Dragon Ball is somewhat deep, but we don't know if it's going to have the legs to be at EVO 3 years from now. But Street Fighter like 5 will. So but fighters are a weird genre when you get into competitive, and it's about what you want to spend your time on. Absolutely. But Shadow of the Colossus.
Shadow of the Colossus don't need to spend a lot of time with it. All right. For those who don't know, this is a game that came out on the PS2, really stretched the boundaries of what the PS2 could offer. Giant open world game. You fight large bosses. That's all we'll really say about it. Yes. It's a game that definitely is a great candidate to be remastered, because it's such a great idea, such a landmark game. I think the gameplay still holds up, the ideas still hold up from it, but it ran like garbage on the PS2.
Like 15 FPS or something.
And it's just because the PS2 was was ready to explode.
Like a DVD explayer. Yeah, you can't do much with it.
It just couldn't. It couldn't render these big worlds, these big bosses, with no loading time as well, I believe.
No loading.
PS3 remaster was great. Now we've got a PS4 remaster made by Blue Point, and they have said that it was built from the ground up, but they've also said that there's actually still the original code that is in there. They're sort of working along with that. But how are you finding this as a remaster?
So before we go any further, it ain't really a remaster, y'all. This is straight remake. I mean, I guess it, like you said, Matt, it is in between the lines with like they're using the original architecture and they're like re-going over it. But
all the textures are probably new.
It is Shadow of the Colossus for the PlayStation 4 is probably going to be up for best of graphics of 2018. Like it's not a PS2 game that has been up-resed. If you didn't tell anybody this was a PS2 game beforehand, and then you're just like, here's Shadow of the Colossus for the PlayStation 4, they would have no clue that there was a PS2 game originally. You cannot tell. It's fully remade. I played it on an HDR TV. This is actually the first game that I played with HDR, and I gotta say, guys, wow, HDR is crazy. It really does add some stuff. But yeah, like you said, you are just playing as this guy. He has a sword. He has a bow. You ride on a horse, and you're trying to kill 16 giant beasts that are roaming this land. You do it one at a time, and essentially, you just ride out of this temple. You hold your sword to the air, and it glimmers, and you head in that direction. Eventually, you'll find a giant boss, and then you fight it. There's 16 of them. They're all completely different. Some are flying in the air. Some are underneath the water. Some are just big towering monsters. But they're all different. And it's not about fighting them like Devil May Cry style. It's about learning how to get up on top of them, scale these humongous beasts, and then do damage to them by finding their weak points. It's almost like each one is a puzzle, and it's set against this large, expansive world. It's like you said, it's very simplistic. It's minimalistic in its storytelling. It doesn't try to put a bunch of background information or world building. It's just like, hey, go and do the thing. You have a reason for doing it, but now you're going to go and do it. I have moved up to, just before we started this, I beat my 9th Colossus. So we're on the 10th now for me. As far as it being a remake in terms of controls, it still feels a little janky. I won't lie. Anybody who played the original PS2 one knows that it was a little bit weird to control. The horse still controls like garbage, in my opinion. So there's that. There is some of the weird, janky controls. And a lot of that is actually intentional, I think, because the whole point of Shadow of the Colossus is you are this small little dude and you're fighting this ginormous thing. It should feel difficult. It shouldn't be easy. I wish they would have, touched up the controls and made them a little bit more tighter, but it is still that. It's $40 as well, which is a really big get because this game, like Uncharted, graphically, it's a $60 game. Like Senua's Sacrifice from last year, this does not represent a mid-tier like you would think. This is the game, albeit, like I said, there's 16 Colossi. There is a timed attack mode you get afterwards, but beyond that, it's just the game with the 16 Colossi and the time attack mode. I'm like 2 hours in, and I'm over half the way there. Then again, I played that game a lot, so your mileage may vary on how quickly you figure out how to beat each monster.
Sure.
But it's a relatively shortish game. What it is it's just a perfect example of what the PS4 can do graphically, why HDR makes a difference. I played like 5 Colossi on the 65-inch TV with HDR that we just got, but there was a slight input lag, and I didn't want to play the whole game with that. So then I played it on my small TV I have over here, and the difference with HDR, man, it's amazing. The game is beautiful. It's just absolutely gorgeous. What it comes down to is it's a tough game. I know people struggle with this game a lot. If you're going in there expecting an action game, probably don't. Understand that it's more of an adventure. They're not going to hold your hand. They're not going to tell you what to do. It's you against 16 giant monsters in a very pretty landscape. And that's what this game is. It is a classic, and it still holds up for sure. But don't make any qualms. It doesn't have like a crazy hard mode. There is a hard mode, but it doesn't have any new content. It's just a graphic overhaul, and that's about it. But I'm having a fun time, man.
When I was just doing a quick little search for Colossus today, just to look on what people are saying about it, one of the headlines vying for attention, I think from The Verge, they had said.
What's up, Verge?
They had said this was their headline. It actually got me to click on it. They said the one thing the Shadow of Colossus remake is missing.
Oh, what was that clickbait?
You know what it was? It was, they said, the fogginess and the blurriness of the visuals.
Yeah, it's okay, because sorry, Verge, blank offs. I just played the 9th Colossus, no spoilers for who it is or what it is, but it does take place in a very foggy area.
Sure.
Now, when you had the PS2, you had that fog because it couldn't do the draw distance. So that's why you have fog, because the game can't, or the system couldn't render it. But the 9th Colossus fight takes place in a giant foggy area, and I could not see the Colossus when it was, 30
So
feet
they
away
have
from me,
the fog when it matters. I think
they have the fog.
I think they were just looking for something to any kind of nostalgia hook, and it worked. They
the
got
Verge
me to
was
click
trying to
on
write a clickbait. So that's the clickbait article, is that, hey, you know what? It doesn't have crappy draw distance.
Yeah, and maybe just like an overall kind of blurriness to it, because the game is got a mysterious dreamlike quality to it. So like I could kind of see where they were coming from.
That is the one thing I will say about this game that I noticed is the Colossi themselves have been crafted to be insanely detailed. You can climb up on them. This game is a lot of a game. It's a game about scale. You're very small. You're climbing this ginormous thing. Oftentimes you can't even see it. You can't fit the whole thing in your camera perspective. You climb up on them using like hair they have, or like little pieces of armor, and all that stuff used to be kind of tough to see, but now it's very, very detailed. And specifically, there is a boss. I won't say which one it is or whatever, but at points it'll shake. And you can see like these little crumbs. I mean, they're giant rocks actually, but falling off of them when he shakes, you get like the particle effect of the dust, and it just all looked fantastic. This game is the same game, just the detail bumped up to 11. It is gorgeous. It is just as good as looking at as Uncharted on Lost Legacy, especially with the wooded areas. This game has a very big, expansive environment, and a lot of it is kind of open fields, but you have wooded areas, you have lakes, you have deserts and stuff like that, and it all looks vastly different. It's just really, really well done. So if you're looking for something to maybe show off a new TV, really get out the power of your PS4 Pro, or you're just looking for something that's going to wow you visually, definitely Shadow of the Colossus. Good, $40 too, brand new. So hey, there you go.
Hey, Bethesda, do you hear that? A Skyrim remaster of an older game should probably be about $40. I think that's what Dark Souls is doing as well.
It's also a remake. Like this isn't just like, hey, we're gonna port it. They completely there's no way it's a remaster. They completely redid everything from the ground, not from the ground up, like you said, using the older stuff, but I mean they did it. And they put it out for $40.
I mean, like there's probably the framework there, which is fine, but the stuff that you actually see and interact with has all been remade.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's, if you're gonna remake a game from 2003, was it, to early 2000s, it should not be $60, guys. Like it should not be $60.
No.
You gotta. I am one of those people who is okay with games going up $10 just so we can get away from loot boxes, but I am not okay with inflating remaster prices. Like, get out of here. It's $40. But yeah, I highly recommend Shadow of the Colossus. If you never played it on PS2, at least try it. Go out. If you're in the US and you have like a red box, I know they have it. Just go out and try it.
Sure.
The first two
That's a great rental game
Colossus.
because you could run through it in a day or two.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, 2 hours and I'm over halfway through. I'm sure if you wanted to use a walkthrough or something, you could blast through it in one night. But even if you're not using any sort of walkthrough or anything, it's a wow game. You're just like, ooh, the scale is awe-inspiring. So definitely if you have a big TV, like I said, you want to show off something, give it a go. And those who liked the PS2 version know this is the exact same thing, no extra frills or extra content, but it does look damn pretty.
And the frame rate is back to being silky smooth?
Yeah, so if you're on the PS4 Pro, I'm pretty sure you have two options, whether you want it to be at like 4K HDR or 60 FPS locked. I'm playing on an OG PS4, like the older one.
Yeah.
Those all have HDR pass-through now. Yeah, I'm such trash. But, it still holds up. It's at 30. It sometimes it brushes towards 60 when you're in those open spaces with not a lot of stuff. But as soon as the Colossus starts fighting, you're going to be around 30 if you're on anything other than a PS4 Pro. But it's nothing noticeable. If anything, what's noticeable over the frame rate is the jankiness of the controls. It's kind of like, I didn't turn like that, horse. Why'd you do that? Well,
I think they wanted to insinuate that the horse was more of a living creature, right? Where you were, because in that game you don't just steer the horse like a car. You pull the reins, it pulls the head, and then the horse eventually moves on. All right, so we got two more we could talk about here. The big one, Monster Hunter World Tour. Oh, sure, Inner Space, and then our big headliner will be the biggest of all, Monster Hunter World. So I played Inner Space. This is a game that is in the same vein of, say, Journey or Flower, more like Flower. It's a game that looks very pretty. This has great sound design. It's very dreamy, atmospheric. The main gameplay centers around you controlling a flying machine that can also dive into the water. You're collecting different, unfortunately, very similar looking objects that glow. You're unlocking different areas. You're exploring. You're finding relics.
Metroidvania-esque, it sounds?
Sort of Metroidvania, but in a 3D space.
Yeah,
so more like Metroid Primania. And it's always funny that we say Metroidvania when, like, it was Metroid that did it. And everyone else, and Castlevania just copied them after.
Castlevania
But in the way of, you do, and that's kind of where the game hits a snag for me, is that with Journey, I mean, Journey's one of the best games ever made, I think, for me. And I liked it quite a bit. It was very, very intuitive. And I never felt like I was doing a lot of backtracking. I felt like I came into an area, I knew exactly what the puzzle was, and then I worked on it until I figured it out, and it wasn't that hard, and then you moved on, and the momentum stayed up. I find
relaxing game.
Very relaxing, yeah. And it's not when you're climbing up that mountain though, but when it's too relaxing at that point.
Hey,
and then
no spoils.
I would no spoiler, but with Inner Space, there's a lot of backtracking. Like I see, you know in Horizon Zero Dawn where every single item that's on the ground has the same white stick above it?
Oh, God, yeah,
So everything kind of ends up looking the same. It doesn't matter if it's ammunition or if it's a metallic piece or if it's a piece of fruit. It all looks the same. So in this one,
white lights.
All the things you collect are all these white balls and these white lights. And then what you're supposed to do is collect some of these and then go to another area, but that area will be this white circular pad, which also looks like a launch pad, which is a thing that can launch you, which launches you very, very slowly for some reason. I'm not really feeling that like force when it launches out. So I was very confused. I never really had an idea of have I already been there. A lot of these places, although they look very beautiful, they look very samey. So I spent a lot of time going around and around, getting lost. Games like RPGs and say Mario Odyssey, for example, are masterpieces of like breadcrumbing and showing you, if you look over and you go, oh, there's coins over there, I haven't been there yet. Whereas this one, because where you're supposed to go to and bring these things back to looks so similar, I found it really, really difficult to advance beyond it. So I didn't get actually too far in it. It's one of those games that if you're looking for a sort of a chill out Journey type game, it's nowhere near in that caliber. But if you can get it on the cheap, it's got some decent flight controls. I wish it was a little heavier when you would swing back with it. It doesn't quite have that momentum of it. But the sound design is incredible. The visuals are pretty nice. And if you got the patience for it and you don't mind just maybe a bit of tedious backtracking, it's going to take you a little longer than you'd like to progress. At least it did with me. It's worth a buy on the cheaper route, but I don't know if I'd grab it at full price right now.
I guess what I was going to ask you is, so when you find your conveyance, you're not, where do I go? What do I do? Is that a result of them not or the lack of hand holding and lack of kind of direction, or is it a victim of, like you said, everything looks samey? What's the big issue here with lack of progression? Is it like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. Why isn't the game pointing me in a direction? Or have I been here before and now I'm lost? Like, there's two different things.
There were on 2 or 3 occasions, just in the opening section. By the way, Sarah just popped in, said she's getting ready for work and she's listening.
What's up, Sarah?
All right, Sarah. Enjoy
all
work.
All right.
I'm glad we're motivating you to get ready for work. Have a great day. But
go do the thing. Be the best you that you can be, Sarah. Have a wonderful day.
Show me you're a tiger. So multiple times when I first started, this would happen to me. I'd be going around and around and around like Rihanna. And then I would go back to this quest giver, this sort of a character that's giving you this exposition, which is a little bit off-putting for like more of an exploratory game. And then I would go back and realize, oh, I had done the thing he wanted, or she.
I've already done it.
But there was not really, like, okay, in Journey or Flower, when you've lit up all the area in, say, Flower, for example, boom. The colors come and the wind comes. You absolutely know. There's not within a shadow of a doubt.
It's good.
And, like, multiple times this happened to me in Inner Space where I just Had no idea I had finished an area until I went back to talk to the land in the white pad that I wasn't sure if it was another white pad. The whole thing was just freaking confusing.
Launch pad.
And then, and then they would sometimes just give you like a vague idea. Go try this out. Go try this out. I don't mind the vague idea as long as there's some sort of idea of what you have done already, so you're not stuck just endlessly circling and backtracking. It just felt it was very inefficient with my time.
Yeah, so it sounds like, and that's the thing that I don't like about games. If you're gonna force me to explore your world without holding my hand or really pointing me in the right direction, it has to be interesting, like Ori and the Blind Forest. I really want to explore the world. And if you're not gonna have an interesting world, at least point me in the direction with decent enough objectives or something. Because the last thing you want to do is have that moment where you're like, wait, have I been here before? Because at that point, not only are you lost, but the place before you is not memorable, and that's the issue. So it sounds interesting, at least in the hook, but unfortunately, a little bit underwhelming.
I didn't even actually get to the hook of it. It's called Inner Space because everything is inverted. The world has been gravity acts opposite how you would think. So
Gravity Rush.
In a way, everything is sort of, there is no up and there is no down, which is great for flying. And water is being pulled sort of outwards. So you kind of have these islands and then these like water islands. So actually the design of it and the hook of it is really smart. And they just needed better breadcrumbing. I mean, maybe I'm just a dope that gets lost pretty easy, but there's other dopes.
You're a gamer. You're a game. That's what I'm saying. You can't. A lot of people do that. They're like, well, maybe I'm not getting it. And that's the point, is that for a game to succeed, you should be able to get it as long as you have any sort of inkling of what games are. Mm-hmm. You know, like Dragon Ball, you can get in there and just punch. You could hit your face against the controller and you'll have fun. You
ever see that baby beat Street Fighter V story mode? It's like a toddler. No. The dad just holds this baby up and it's like slamming down. And she beats it like on the normal difficulty. It gets to the first story mode.
Maybe not like that for Dragon Ball, but at least the first arc, I could just sit there. I was funny thing. I'm laying there with my girlfriend. She was just finishing up a project for school, and she finishes up, and I'm playing Dragon Ball. It's like the third arc, and so she comes over and cuddles me. And anybody who knows who's cuddled, usually don't have full access to both hands at once.
Yeah,
I'm a jackass, and I play games long enough that I can play games with one hand. I'm not trying to be like, oh, look at how cool I am. But I sat there and I just, with one hand clawed, tapped X, and then anytime I got a bar, I would just rub my hand against the analog and smack the trigger.
Okay.
And I like got a perfect. And she's like, babe, you're so good at this game. You beat him with one hand. And I was like, no, it's just not hard. And that's the point, is like, on one hand, it is silly that you could beat a level or beat like an end game kind of thing with one hand. But on the other hand, it shows that it's welcoming. It's not too difficult. And I think that's something fun. Maybe I just wanted to toot my own horn for beating that with one hand.
You want to hoot your own horn.
I can't talk. And we have to talk about Monster Hunter World still? Oh, man.
Oh, baby.
Yeah.
Well, let's here, you take a quick little break, and drink your water. We'll go to look in the comment section here. Crazy Cause is hearing a clicking sound. Maybe he's just crazy. Maybe it's coming through. Jeremy B's hearing a crackling sound. Well, what we'll do is I'm going to turn down the volume and everything. Maybe it's gaining out.
It might be me.
I don't know. So we'll bring all that down. Jeremy B is also hearing it. Jeremy B says, definitely remake. There are comparison pics you can unlock, and it's so crazy how good it looks compared to the old.
I think my chair is cracking when I move. It could be that.
It's probably on my end. I think it's here.
Who knows?
Because I'm the sound master here. I think I'm hearing it as well. All right. So we've got Monster Hunter World. Now, you've never played a Monster Hunter game. Your friends are crazy into Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter was a big deal on the PS2. If you go back and look at some of this PS2 footage, it's crazy how Dark Souls that thing was years before Demon Souls came out.
Yep.
It was very quiet, atmospheric action RPG with very slow, deliberate attacks through a large open world to what the PS2 could handle in that area. I mean, they had loading between connected areas, a lot of crafting, and taking on big, fearsome enemies. Handhelds. And then super popular on the PSP with Monster Hunter Portable, and it just kept going and going. Monster Hunter Ultimate, these are on the 3DS, but this is the first time it's come back to a big major platform. It looks good. Is this the game that's going to get people into Monster Hunter that didn't know what a Monster Hunter was?
So,
what do you think?
Monster Hunter is many things. If you're interested about Monster Hunter, you probably want to go read my review. It's like a 10-minute read. It's 2,000 words because Monster Hunter is just so much. There's so much going on in the game, and its biggest issue beforehand was or before, with the PS2 and the PSP ones, there was such a high barrier of entry. It's almost like you needed to read a wiki. There was things that they wouldn't explain in game. Literally, you would need to use outside resources just to figure out how to craft some items. But what Monster Hunter World is it's their attempt to kind of bring in newcomers. It removes some of the nuance to it. I know it might upset some older veteran players, but what it does is it makes a lot of quality of life changes. Like without me playing older Monster Hunter games, a lot of it's going to be lost on me. But there's some things like before upgrading your weapon, you would have to like figure out what the different upgrade paths were. In Monster Hunter World, it's all laid out like a skill tree. It's not the most intuitive thing, but it presents the information. If anything, Monster Hunter World always presents you with enough information for you to figure it out by tinkering, which is more than you could say about previous ones, but it never like directly tells you. Like when you start the game, you have a custom character creator, and you make a guy, and you're like, ooh, that's cool. Then they give you an option between 14 different weapons. And there's a lot, and they're different. You got bows, you got big swords, you got axes, you have switchblades, sling stuff. There's tons of different things to do. They do offer you a difficulty meter. So if you're a new player like me and you're like, oh, I want the 1-star difficulty because that's easy, you can pick up one of those. But even then, they don't necessarily tell you exactly what you can do with your weapon or the full extent of it. You would have to go in and check your hunter's notes where it tells you all the cool stuff you can do and how to use your weapon. And that's what Monster Hunter is. It's a lot of, here is a feature. We're going to give you kind of a baseline understanding of how it works, and then we're going to leave you to tinker with it and figure out how it plays into the bigger picture. And they also don't front load everything with the first chapter. They kind of give you new features as you go. If you have no clue what Monster Hunter World is, you're probably confused by now. You play as a dude. You're at this new place called the New World. It's like a new continent, and there's a big monster that's headed towards it. And so you're there to figure out why the monster's headed towards the New World and why the monsters on the New World are going crazy. So you take these quests, you go out to different areas, you hunt down these big giant monsters, not as big as Shadow of the Colossus, but pretty big. And then you have long, like 25 to 30-minute fights with these things, with a Dark Souls-esque combat. It's tough. You drink potions, but a lot of it is, like Matt said, dedicated attacks. You're not going in there smashing buttons. It's going to be that, do I hit 3 times and risk getting smacked, or do I hit twice and roll away? That whole kind of strategic thing. There is online offerings as well, but oh man, finding people online and playing with your friends is such a hassle. I don't know why, but it's just unintuitive. It would take me 3 minutes to explain why it's bad. And that's bad as it is. It's not just find matchmaking. You gotta like find your friend, jump in their group, then join their squad. If you want to play a main mission with somebody, because they break it up like any other RPG does. You have assigned quests, which are your main quests. They're usually like hunt this specific monster to progress the story. You have bounties, which are like collectathons, investigations, which give you like a bunch of rewards, but are kind of like side quests, and optional quests. Anything but assigned quests, your main quest, they're usually fine to play with friends. There's not a lot of interruption. But if you want to play the main story with somebody else, the person hosting the game has to watch all cutscenes in that mission before anyone else can join. If you have not seen the cutscenes, you also have to see them before you can join on somebody. So what that means, Matt, is say that you're on mission 3 and I'm on mission 3 and we want to play together. You have to start up a solo game, go halfway through mission 3. I have to start up a solo game or an online game, go all the way through until I see the cutscenes. Then I can invite you from your solo game to my online lobby, and then you can join the quest from the quest board. It's as bad as it sounds.
So playing the main quest is a big problem, but is there anything else that's easy to jump into that you can just go around and do?
That's what I mean. Yeah, so when you have like a main camp, it's called the Stera. There's like 3 different floors. You have a canteen where you can eat food to power up before fights. You have a marketplace. You have your smithy who upgrades your weapons and armor using crafting items you've pulled from monsters or while you're exploring. And generally speaking, you just hang out, and then you go on a quest by looking at the quest board. And like I said, there's different, there's assignments, optionals, investigations. Things like optional quests and investigations, they don't have cutscenes, so you can usually just start them, and then everyone can jump in, y'all go on there together. But the main quest is like, oh, wow, I maybe spent 65 hours doing the main quest. It's lengthy. Some of those quests you definitely want help for. It's weird how they do it. So if you're fighting solo, you have your little sidekick, Cat, who will heal you and attack the monster and stuff. Once you go out to 2 players, you still have the little cat, but the game gets more difficult. And once you go to 3 or 4 players, you can have up to 4 players in like one mission area or whatever. You lose your cat buddies. The game is more difficult. So there's pros and cons to playing online. I played a lot solo, but I also spent like at least 20 hours doing random stuff with friends, helping them out with specific monsters or going on quests with them. Because at the end of the day, the narrative is it's pretty thin. It's not like this riveting narrative. The game is about going out there, hunting these big monsters solo or with your friends, getting the loot that you pull off their bodies and making new gear, and then eventually grinding that stuff out. This game is the treadmill. That's what people love about Monster Hunter, is that once you've seen the story, you've played it, what you're going to do is spend time going back, hunting those monsters, getting better gear, raising up your hunter rank, which is dependent on your gear, and generally becoming a badass. Because the way the game works, that each new monster kind of has a gear set associated with it. So if you kill it and get 3 tails, then maybe you can, you pull 3 tails out of the loot, then maybe you can craft the leg armor or something like that. So there's always this progression going, but it does a good job being intuitive enough where you could figure it out. But like you said, I have a bunch of friends who are super into Monster Hunter, so they were kind of helping me go as they figured it out too. So I would say that if you are interested in Monster Hunter, now is the time. Now is the time. Get Monster Hunter World if you're interested in it, because this is probably the easiest it's gonna get, unless they go full mainstream. But this game is blown up in a way that I didn't expect it to, so figuring it out probably isn't very hard. You're probably gonna have tons of people online that you can ask for help from. There's huge subreddits and stuff like that. But it is a little bit of a chore to learn. But once you do learn it, it's fun. It's really fun. Like I said, I spent like 70, I think my file is like 85 hours now. I'm not the guy who likes crafting. I'm not that dude who likes getting in there, grinding stuff, fighting the same monster 4 or 5 times over. No, I'm not that guy. But when you take the online with your friends and everybody, there's 14 different weapons. So using a greatsword feels completely different from a bow, completely different strategy. When you have that, so you can have 4 different people with 4 different weapons, make a different team. Everyone has their status effects. It just really feels cool, and it's really, really fun. And like I said, a lot of these fights are 25 to 30 minutes. Like you're getting in there. You feel like you accomplished something. I often don't get that feeling of like, wow, I did it. Very rarely do you get that wow, I did it kind of feeling. That I won my first match in PUBG feeling, right?
Right.
But sometimes I would have a particularly rough fight, and then when I finally did it, it was really just like that. Whoa, I did it! That's awesome! And for a game to give me that, it's good. For all of its problems it has as far as teaching the player how to play it, once you get in it, it's a barrel of fun, my friends. It is really good, but you do have to put the time in to learn it. I would say it's one of those games, kind of like Final Fantasy 13. It doesn't get great until like 15 to 20 hours in. It's gonna really, wow. Well, it has, it teaches you in the beginning. You feel like you're doing something, but there will be a moment where it'll click. Whether it's your first 30-minute fight, whether it's the first time you barely escape because your Palico heals you right as you're about to get hit by this giant monster, whether it's you and 3 friends going up against a huge monster that you're having problems with before, at one point, you will be like, okay, I understand why people like Monster Hunter. I get it. And that for me was like 15 hours in. But for you, maybe it's longer, maybe it's sooner. All I know is that I had a really, really good time with it. And yeah, it has its issues, and most of them come with teaching the player how to play. But their crafting system, everything works so well together. It hurts my head because there's so much going on in this game, but it all feels like one big experience. You always feel like you're working towards something. Kind of how like Destiny always makes you feel like you're progressing. Monster Hunter always makes you feel like you're doing something. You're really achieving something, whether it's getting rare loot drops, whether it's, upgrading that weapon finally, or getting that new piece of armor. You feel like you've done something every time you hunt a monster, and that is cool.
Now, Ted is he's asking in the chat here. He says that he's not asking, he's telling. He says it's lacking EXP levels. No XP levels.
So that's something.
So it's you're more of an upgrading your weapon and your armor as opposed to your body.
Ted hasn't beaten it then. Because so you have what's called HR, and that's your hunter rank. And from when you start the game until you beat the main story, it is tied into how you progress with the story. So like when I finished the game, it said that I was HR 15, right? That's like where you finish the game at. And then once you beat the game, it says, hey, here's your true HR ranking that's dependent on the quests you beat and the gear you have. So like when my friend Zach finished the game, he was at like 23, right? He was level 23 when he finished. When I finished, I was actually level 18. So there is experience, there is gear score, there is that stuff. It just doesn't display it to you until like 50 or 60 hours after you've beaten the main story. And at that point, it is grindy. But yeah, like Ted said, it's less about, I have a new level, I'm going to allot skill points. It's more about, I'm going to upgrade this piece of armor to raise its defense rating, or I'm going to get this next sword that has fire attack or a bit sharper. It's about your gear, not about your character. Which kind
of makes sense. When you're playing these RPGs, and it kind of it makes sense when they're say 15 or 16, and all of a sudden they go from being a level 1 to a level 99. But I always think it's crazy when you meet these characters in an RPG and they're 40 years old, yet they become 100 times more powerful than they ever were. Like, what were you doing for the rest of your life? Now all of a sudden you've learned 25 spells and you can summon demons just because you've been hanging out with this 15-year-old from some Japanese village for a while.
Well, and that's what Monster Hunter does, is for all told, you feel that power. I said this in my review. If there's one thing it does, when I started that game, I was a scared little hunter, and I was like, I just want to kill this lizard thing. It's so scary, but it's so big. Okay. And by the end of the game, I was taking on monsters that were 5, 6, 7 times as big as that first monster, and I was like, oh, let's go. You have nothing on me. I'm gonna wreck your house, bro. And it's just, you feel that power with your gear as you go. And maybe it's not represented as your character. Your weapons don't really change in visual. It's really the armor that changes visually. You don't get a super cool aurora of I'm glowing red, I'm gonna kill everything. But from hour 1 to hour 60, there is a climb, and you feel more and more powerful as you topple each one of these beasts. It's kind of like how Shadow of the Colossus, when you finish it, you're like, or when you finish the one of the fights, you're like, wow, I actually did it. That's what Monster Hunter does, but each time you feel like I could maybe do this more and more.
Is this game mostly, obviously it's about getting these contracts and going and killing monsters, and then you upgrade and you kill bigger monsters. Is there anything else in it? Is there any kind of exploration or anything else going on?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of stuff going on in this game, so I highly recommend you read my review if you want, because I get in depth there. But you have your main camp, that's Astera, and then you have a few, won't spoil how many, a few extra zones, right? So let's say the first one's called the Ancient Forest. It's like a big map that's split up into 12 to 13 different sectors or portions of the map. That is more or less a thing for older players, because beforehand, in old Monster Hunters, you would have to do a loading screen in between these zones. Now that's not a thing, but they break it up into sectors, maybe so it's a little bit easier to figure out. I don't know why, but it's okay, so over here in Sector 1 is where the lake is, and over in Sector 11 and 12 is where the forest is. But essentially, you go into these areas. You can either enter them on a quest, like you're searching for a specific monster, an optional quest, or you can just go and explore, is what they call an expedition. But every time you go out to hunt a monster, you're not just going to wind up there and go and fight it. You have to find it first. So you're going to explore the whole entire area. You're picking up crafting items. You're picking up flowers, mushrooms, ammo for your sling. There's tons of stuff littered throughout the world. And the world feels very organic and alive. Each map feels different. The monsters interact with each other. But there is more than just attacking the monsters. you're using your environment to your advantage. Where you instigate the fight is also a big deal. You know, so you can go to the thing's nest and you can lure it there, and that's something different than trying to fight it over a lake. You know,
Right.
just like there's a lot of player agency in how you want to approach a fight and how you want to do that, and it's cool. But a lot of the game is really just go find. A lot of the main quest is go find this monster, beat it up a bunch. It's gonna run away. You're gonna track it back down. You're gonna beat it up, and eventually you're gonna kill it. Where you get the other stuff is the optional quests. You know, like, hey, there's these monsters and they have eggs in their nest. We need you to pick one up and bring it back to camp. But if you get hit, you drop the egg. Like those little fun little side quest things and those stuff. It's gonna be put in optional quests, but they exist. You know, if you want, you can start up Monster Hunter. You can pick one of the however many zones, jump in and go attack a monster if you really wanted to. You know, there is that exploration, but it doesn't focus on it. It's not like, hey, we're an open world game. It's like, hey, these are where the monsters are. It's a map. I'm trying to think of how to explain it. It's like a big map in Mario Odyssey, like that size. And then that's where the monsters are contained. So each map might have 5 or 6 different monsters, and so the story will take you through one by one. You're kind of essentially climbing the food chain of each zone, and then you'll move on. But at any time, if you want to explore that zone, go for it, because you're going to have to loot for crafting materials, try to find rare items to make food and stuff. There's a bunch of stuff going on, so I might make it sound like it's a little bit less than what it is, but there's a lot going on. Anybody who likes Monster Hunter will definitely find 400, 300 hours in this. I'm at 80 hours, and I have a loaded quest log. I just chose not to go back because, like you said earlier, when you're done with an 80-hour game, you're not like jumping at the bit to go back.
Yeah.
Unless you're super into that game. You know, I have friends who are 150 hours into it now, but I was like, okay, I've had my fill. I'll go back when I want to. It's an interesting game. It really is. It was an experience for me not having played a Monster Hunter game before. It was very eye-opening, but I get it now. I do get it.
Okay. Wow. Glowing review. Matt, thank you for all your knowledge on Shadow of the Colossus, Monster Hunter World, and Dragon Ball. We've reduced your hundreds and hundreds of hours to an hour of talk. And now you've got to fill up on more game knowledge.
Hey man, what is even coming out this month? We got Faye, we got Shadow already came out.
Right.
What is this
and
month?
Soon, maybe next week, once we've run out of things to talk about, we'll do a most anticipated games of 2018.
Yeah, bro. I would say the Shadow and Monster Hunter World were on my most anticipated list.
Yeah, it's been a pretty strong year so far.
I would say. I mean, I have beaten, I think, 10 games so far this year. And as far as AAA releases and big releases from people like Sony and Square, yeah, wow, a good start to the year. Monster Hunter was just so big. Iconoclast's
got some decent reviews if you're into little Metroidvania. It's on PS4,
Celeste.
Vita, PC. Oh, yeah, Celeste. The big
Celeste
surprise platformer.
Good.
Actually got a 10 from IGN or GameSpot.
I believe that's on PS4, Switch, PC.
You nailed it.
Maybe
right.
Switch PC. Okay, cool. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of really good things about Celeste. I kind of want to get into that. There's a lot of stuff coming out this year, guys.
Zodiac Age made its way over to the PC.
Yes, it did.
In the Woods. Hit the Switch.
Night in the Woods on Switch, guys. If you have a Switch and you haven't played Night in the Woods and you like adventure-style kind of narrative-driven games, get that. It's fun.
Oh,
it's really,
you know
really
what's
good.
coming out? February 13th is this Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Yeah, I'm interested about that.
Sort of an action RPG that's going to go for... They're going to ditch fantasy, and it's going to be more historically accurate medieval stuff. Could be pretty interesting.
One of our writers, Kirsty Grant, will be reviewing that. So keep your eye out.
Bayonetta 1 and 2 collection will be coming out. Metal Gear Survive.
Metal Gear Survive. Oh, I'm deciding if I want to review that or not because it is just all online multiplayer, right? It's like what they try to do with Sons of Liberty 4.
Right. I think it's man, is there really no single player or is it more like it's a co-op survive game all the way?
Pretty sure there's no single player.
That was the worst part about the online stuff was the actual online competitive was pretty decent in Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yeah, 5.
But when you're just trying to play a single player game in 5, and all of a sudden they have online people raiding your base, and you didn't play for a couple days, and you didn't pay for insurance, so you lost all your stuff. I mean, they made that game worse the longer that it was out.
People are getting their hands on it, and they seem to enjoy it a little bit. So maybe it's better than nothing, but we'll see. It's just, I don't think it's a Metal Gear anymore. Hideo Kojima's not there anymore.
No.
He's moved on.
It could be good, though. I mean, Metal Gear Rising isn't really a Metal Gear game. It's not made by Kojima, and it's totally action. It's not stealth. And it's a fine action game. But that's going to do it for now. Carlos Michel is really into Freedom Planet, the old Sonic ripoff game. He really wanted me to ask you about that. Charlie Line Guy's talking about Dragon Age 4 coming up. Really?
Yeah, that's that they've been talking about over there at the EA. Is that they have a team working on Dragon Age. A lot of them are doing that. Anthem, everyone's working on Anthem, but they still have a small sect of people working on Dragon Age. Another thing we heard, unfortunately, from Jason Schreier over at Kotaku, Capcom Vancouver laid off about 50 of their people. That's the developer responsible for Dead Rising 2, 3, and 4. Mm-hmm. They were reportedly making Dead Rising 5. It took place in New York City, and they have now laid off about 50 of their staff. Apparently, they're still making it, but, shouts out to everybody who lost their job. Hopefully, you find something within the industry. You hate to see that happen, especially for such a big franchise like Dead Rising from Capcom. You hate to see those people lose their jobs. But
sure, I mean, that's maybe a bigger example of it, but that is common. I mean, they hire a lot of people on contracts, they ramp up, and then when it comes down to once the game is out and it's done, they usually lay off people. And they go on to the next project. Well,
that's what was interesting about this, is because it's mid development on 5. I guess they were making Dead Rising 5, and it was X amount of bigness, and then they were like, hey, we need to make it this amount of bigness, and for that we're gonna lay off 50 people. So yeah, it was just more or less like, sucks to see that happen, but it is what it is.
Although those people probably don't want to look at it, I did write I'm gonna have a piece up about Capcom and how they're one of the greatest game companies of all time, and that I didn't. Once I saw them, like, right, Capcom does Monster Hunter World, and they do Ace Attorney, and Street Fighter, and Mega Man.
Well, don't they do...
And Breath of Fire,
Ace
and
Attorney,
Dragon's Dogma.
Atlas.
No, they made Ace Attorney.
Really? I thought that was Atlas.
No, bro. Capcom.
Damn.
Every single genre, they not only have a good entry in it, they have made some amazing contributions to a lot of different genres, and created genres. Like, the Mega Man...
If you played Super Nintendo or Genesis at all, anytime it would have that, and you knew it was a good game, whether it was Aladdin, Street Fighter, or whatever. If a game had the Capcom name on it, that's what I'm saying. If it was a game based on a movie and it had the Capcom name, you knew it was a good game. Mm-hmm. Like, that is something you can't say for any games nowadays. Like,
well, I mean, the track record they have, they're right up there with Nintendo in terms of longevity and variety. And I think that they probably have more variety than what Nintendo's put out.
Yeah, Capcom's great. The problem is Capcom often fumbles it. Every few years they'll just fumble it and people forget. And that's the thing, too, is Capcom was like, hey, where's Mega Man? Why aren't you doing any of our good series? And everything they were putting out, people weren't like really biting onto. But with Monster Hunter... all this they've been really coming into their own in 2018. So hopefully, good stuff from them. Mega Man 11 is supposed to come out this year. We'll talk about that some
more Capcom stuff. Okay, so you can check out our 90skid.com. We got lots of news up there. Matt's writing full reviews on all the games we talked about. I'm doing some opinion pieces. You can join our Discord and talk to some wonderful people about games. We got that Patreon. It always helps when you support there. You'll see more stuff on this channel, and you'll have a say in that stuff. And that's going to do it. We'll be back. I'll probably come back in maybe this weekend or in a couple days, and we'll finish off the character ranking tournament. We'll be doing some more Hear the Music, Guess the Game, fun stuff like that. Tomorrow we're playing Tales of Xillia 2. And the other games, Hail Zillia. And then we'll be playing more Final Fantasy 12 and Metal Gear Solid 3. I'm Matt Falvey at GameThinkTalk on Twitter. Matthew Owen, what's your Twitter?
You can find me at SGC64Matt. I also have a podcast, too. We're on a break right now between seasons. But if you like listening to that, Super Gamecast 64. That's a fun time.
Right above your head. Crazy Cause actually designed it to go right above your screen. All right, everybody. We are out of here. Goodbye for now.
Deuces.